I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand, a soft but persistent vibration that broke through the fog of sleep. The clock read 7:30 a.m., and I had just a few minutes before I needed to start getting ready for work. I reached over, still groggy, and grabbed my phone. As I unlocked the screen, I noticed something strange. A new message from my mother-in-law, Ellen. Now, Ellen and I had never been best friends, but we had a cordial relationship. Or at least that's what I thought. My stomach turned a little as I opened the text. It was short. Too short. And sharp. David, you're not welcome here anymore. Rachel and I don't want you around anymore. It's over. I stared at those words, my eyes scanning the screen over and over, as if I could somehow make them mean something else, something less brutal. My hands trembled as I clenched my phone tighter, trying to make sense of what I had just read. My heart started pounding in my chest, and the room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. I couldn't breathe. What did she mean? What had I done? The confusion turned into a tight knot in my stomach. I sat up, letting the phone fall into my lap, and took a deep breath. My head was spinning. Was this some kind of joke? But then again, Ellen had never really been the joking type. She was direct, cold even. And if she was serious... The room was silent except for the ticking clock, counting down the seconds. Each tick felt like a cruel reminder that time was slipping away. I tried to shake off the discomfort gnawing at me, but the uncertainty was overwhelming. I wanted to scream, to cry, but instead I sat there frozen, staring at the empty space in front of me, the phone burning a hole in my lap. Rachel was still asleep next to me, her back to me, her breathing steady. I glanced at her, then back at the message. I couldn't understand it. It didn't make sense. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Why hadn't Rachel told me anything? Was she aware of this? I couldn't believe Ellen would go this far, and yet I had seen her little jabs, the subtle comments over the years. How I didn't measure up, how I didn't fit in with their family the way she thought I should. But this was something else entirely. This was a line being crossed that I never expected. I gently nudged Rachel, my fingers lightly brushing her shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open, and she blinked up at me, still half asleep. "Hey, wake up," I said softly, trying to keep my voice steady, though I felt anything but. She groaned, squinting at me. "What's wrong?" I hesitated, then showed her the message. The words were like a slap in the face. "Read this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She sat up a little, rubbing her eyes, and glanced at the phone. At first, there was just confusion in her eyes, but then I saw it. Her expression shifted. I watched her face fall, and suddenly I felt like I was the one being punched in the gut. Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. She looked at me, then at the message again, her brow furrowing. It felt like hours passed before she spoke. I didn't know she was going to do this. I felt a lump form in my throat, a mixture of anger and hurt flooding through me. "You didn't know?" My voice cracked as I asked. "Rachel, why didn't you tell me? What's going on? Why is she doing this?" Her eyes darted away, avoiding my gaze. That flicker of guilt, that small shift in her body language, was all I needed to know that something was wrong. I felt betrayed, not just by Ellen, but by Rachel too. "David, it's not what you think," Rachel began, but I could barely hear her over the roar of my emotions. How could she not have told me? How could she let her mother get away with this? My mind raced with questions I didn't want the answers to. I wanted to shake her, to demand the truth. But instead, I stayed frozen. The silence between us grew, and in that moment, I felt more alone than I ever had. My whole body was tense, my fists clenched at my sides, desperate for something to make sense of this mess. "Why did she do this, Rachel?" I whispered, my voice barely audible now. The words felt like they were cutting through me. Rachel's eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. She didn't answer right away, her gaze drifting toward the window as if she were looking for some kind of answer out there. The silence between us felt suffocating, and I could hear my own heart beating in my ears, each thump louder than the last. Finally, she spoke, but her voice was shaky, barely above a whisper. "I didn't want you to be caught in the middle. I didn't want this to be your battle." She paused, her eyes brimming with tears. "David, my mom, she's been pressuring me for months, telling me I need to take control of our relationship, to put you in your place." My chest tightened at her words, and a wave of disbelief washed over me. Was this the truth? Had I really been the target of all this behind my back? Had Ellen been quietly undermining me, manipulating Rachel into choosing sides? "I never wanted it to go this far," Rachel continued, her voice breaking. "I was planning to confront her. I wanted to handle this with you together. But I guess I wasn't fast enough. She's always had this way of making me feel like I'm not doing enough, that I'm not good enough for her." My mind was spinning, and I couldn't process everything she was saying all at once. The hurt from Ellen's message, mixed with the shock of Rachel's confession, hit me like a freight train. It was all too much, too fast. I leaned back against the headboard, rubbing my face with both hands. The weight of it all felt unbearable. My own wife had been caught in the middle of this. Ellen had been playing some kind of game, manipulating us both without us even realizing it. It was like a sick puzzle that we were only now starting to piece together, and the picture was uglier than I ever could have imagined. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked, my voice hoarse with the sting of betrayal. "Why keep me in the dark?" Rachel's face crumpled, and she shook her head. "I was trying to protect you. I didn't want to drag you into it. You've been nothing but patient, and my mom, she's always been difficult to handle. I didn't want to ruin what we had because of her." I could see the guilt in her eyes, but I couldn't help the frustration bubbling up inside me. "So, you thought keeping me in the dark was protecting me? You thought letting me get blindsided by her was protecting me?" The hurt in her face deepened, and I could tell my words had landed harder than I intended. She let out a shaky breath, wiping away a tear that had fallen. "No, David. I just didn't want to lose you. And I didn't want her to come between us." There was a moment of silence between us, and I could feel the tension thickening the air. My heart was racing, still reeling from the message, but now it was mixed with something else. Something sharper. Betrayal, yes, but also confusion. How had things gotten this bad? Why hadn't I seen it coming? I wanted to shout, to ask how much more I had missed, but there was a part of me that knew it wouldn't help. The questions I had were bigger than this moment, and the answers would take time. Answers that neither of us were ready for yet. "I'm sorry," Rachel whispered, breaking through my thoughts. "I'm sorry for not being honest with you. I thought I could fix it on my own, but I can't. Not without you." Her voice was filled with regret, and for the first time, I saw the weight she had been carrying. She wasn't just fighting with her mother. She was fighting for us, for our marriage, but doing it in the wrong way. And now, it felt like everything was coming to a head. I looked at her, seeing her vulnerability, and the anger inside me started to soften. But it didn't go away. I was still hurt, still confused. And yet, there was something else growing, a determination. Ellen had thought she could break us apart with one cruel message, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. She didn't know what Rachel and I were capable of together. "We'll fix this," I said, my voice steadier now. I didn't know how, but I knew we had to. But we do it together. No more secrets. No more letting her control us. Rachel nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude, and I could feel the tension between us beginning to ease. It wasn't over. The fight wasn't finished yet, but this time I was ready to stand my ground. I wasn't going to let Ellen, or anyone else, tear us apart. The hours that followed felt like a blur. Rachel and I didn't say much after that. We both knew that we had to face Ellen, but the weight of it all made it hard to think clearly. The morning seemed to drag on forever as we sat in that silence, each of us processing everything in our own way. The clock on the wall ticked away, every second stretching longer than the last. My mind kept racing, bouncing from one thought to the next. Why had Ellen sent that message? What had she hoped to accomplish? And why had Rachel kept me in the dark? I knew I needed answers, but I couldn't focus long enough to come up with a plan. My phone buzzed again, and I jumped. For a moment I thought it might be Ellen, or worse, another message from her. But it was Rachel's phone this time. I watched her face fall when she saw the name on the screen. "It's Mom," she said quietly, her voice tinged with hesitation. I could see the conflict in her eyes. She was torn, caught between the woman who had given her life and the man she loved. Her hand trembled slightly as she swiped to answer, and I could tell she wasn't ready for this conversation. She hadn't even been prepared to face her mom about the tension that had been building for months. How could she be ready now? "Hello?" Rachel's voice was calm, but I could tell it was forced. She was trying to sound composed, like she wasn't standing on the edge of something much bigger than either of us. I couldn't make out the words on the other end of the line, but I didn't need to. I saw Rachel's expression change. Her face tightened as she listened, her jaw clenching. Every second that passed felt like a heavy weight pressing down on me. "Mom, we need to talk," Rachel said, her voice steady but strained. She paused, listening, and I saw her shoulders sag a little, the tension in her body releasing as she prepared to face her mother head-on. "No, I'm not doing this anymore. You can't just send David a message like that and expect everything to be fine." I stood up and walked to the window, needing some space from the conversation, but also drawn to it. Rachel's words echoed in my head. You can't just send David a message like that. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or terrified. The moment I had been dreading was here. Rachel was finally standing up for us, standing up for what we had, and it felt like a pivotal moment. But the fear of what would come next still loomed over me. As I stood by the window, I heard Rachel's voice again, this time much firmer. "Mom, this isn't about you anymore. I'm married to David, and I'm not going to let you tear us apart." Her words hit me like a wave, and I felt a flicker of pride deep within me. Rachel had always been the kind-hearted one, the one who tried to keep the peace, but now I could see the steel in her. She was done with Ellen's manipulation. I didn't know how this conversation was going to end, but I felt a spark of hope. If Rachel was finally ready to take control, maybe, just maybe, we could fix this mess. I turned to face her, and she caught my gaze for the first time since the call started. Her eyes were filled with determination, but there was also a layer of fear beneath it. She was standing on the edge of something big, something that would change everything. "I'm not going to let you ruin our relationship, Mom. I can't do that anymore. I won't let you manipulate me or David. We're a team, and I'm not choosing sides. You need to understand that," Rachel said, her voice growing stronger with each word. I could hear Ellen's voice on the other end of the line, but Rachel was no longer listening passively. She was standing her ground, and I realized something in that moment. This wasn't just about Ellen anymore. It wasn't just about me. This was about Rachel finding her voice, and I had never been prouder of her. Rachel hung up the phone, and the room fell silent. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure. Ellen's control over our lives, over Rachel's, was over. The battle had begun, but this time we were ready for it. Rachel walked over to me and paused for a moment before speaking. "David, we're in this together. I won't let her tear us apart, I promise you." I nodded, feeling a surge of relief. We were in this together. No more secrets. No more manipulation. It was time to take control of our own story. We weren't going to let Ellen's toxic influence dictate our lives anymore. We were stronger than that. And together, we would face whatever came next. The tension in the room was still palpable, but it felt like the first breath after a storm, the calm before the real fight. And as I looked at Rachel, I realized this wasn't just about surviving. This was about fighting for our future, a future we would shape together, no matter what Ellen or anyone else threw our way. The hours that followed felt like the calm before the storm. Rachel and I had made our decision, but the weight of what was about to happen still hung heavily in the air. The phone call with Ellen had ended, but the silence between us lingered, thick and uncomfortable. We both knew that we couldn't avoid the inevitable confrontation for much longer. Ellen wasn't the type to let things slide, and after that message I had no doubt she was expecting some kind of response, though I had no idea how she would react when she found out Rachel was no longer willing to let her control us. I could see it in Rachel's eyes. She was terrified, but there was something else too, something stronger, a sense of resolve that I hadn't seen before. For the first time, I felt like she wasn't the one being dragged along in her mother's wake. She was taking control of her own life, and I was right beside her. "I think we need to go see her," Rachel said suddenly, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the edge of anxiety beneath it. I could tell she wasn't entirely sure how to handle this. But she was determined, and that's all I could ask for. I nodded. "I agree. We can't keep running from this. It's time to face it head on." We didn't speak for a while after that. We both knew what had to be done, but we weren't ready for what it would mean. Rachel went to grab her purse and keys, and I took a deep breath. My stomach churned. I knew I had to stand by her, but a part of me was still bracing for what Ellen would say when we walked into her house. What kind of confrontation were we about to face? We drove in silence. The familiar streets passed by, but the usual comfort of our neighborhood was gone. Everything felt charged, like a storm about to break. Every stoplight, every turn, every minute closer to Ellen's house felt like a countdown. I glanced over at Rachel. Her hands were gripping the steering wheel, her knuckles white. I reached over and placed my hand on hers. She didn't look at me, but her fingers squeezed mine in return. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. In that moment, I felt more connected to her than ever before. We pulled into Ellen's driveway, and for a brief moment I thought about turning around. But Rachel's grip tightened around my hand, grounding me. There was no turning back now. We got out of the car and walked to the front door. My heart was pounding in my chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. The door opened before we could knock, and there she was. Ellen, standing in the doorway, her arms crossed over her chest. Her expression was guarded, but I could see the tension in her body. She was waiting for us, and I knew she had been rehearsing what she was going to say. "David, Rachel," she said, her voice cold. "I didn't expect to see you today." Rachel didn't hesitate. She stepped forward, her shoulders squared. I could see the fire in her eyes, the determination that I hadn't seen in years. "We need to talk, Mom." Ellen's eyes flickered for just a second, but she quickly masked it with a tight smile. "I don't think there's much to talk about. You made your decision, Rachel." Rachel shook her head. "No, you made the decision for us. You crossed a line. I'm not going to let you control me anymore. Or David." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. I could see the surprise in Ellen's eyes, followed quickly by a flash of anger. She opened her mouth, but Rachel didn't give her the chance to speak. "I've been letting you pull the strings for far too long," Rachel continued. "But I'm done. We're done. This—" She motioned between the three of us. "This isn't healthy anymore, and I won't let you manipulate me or my marriage any longer." There was a long pause. I could feel the tension thickening the air, like the moment before an explosion. Ellen's face was unreadable, but I could see her struggling to maintain control. She wasn't used to being challenged like this. It had always been Rachel bending to her will, never the other way around. Finally, Ellen spoke, her voice sharp. "You think you can just walk away from all of this? From me? From your family?" Rachel's response was immediate. "I am walking away, and I'm not asking for your approval anymore. I'm asking for respect. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what's best for me and for David." I could feel my chest tighten as I stood there, watching this play out. My whole body was tense, every muscle locked in anticipation. I wasn't sure what Ellen would do next, but I knew this conversation was only the beginning. The storm had officially hit, and I wasn't sure who would come out on top. Ellen's eyes narrowed. "You're making a huge mistake, Rachel. I'll make sure you regret this." But Rachel wasn't backing down. She stood tall, unflinching. "Maybe, but I can't live my life based on what you want anymore. I'm done feeling like I'm not enough for you. This is about us now, Mom. About David and me. And I'm not going to let you tear us apart." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Ellen was still processing what Rachel had said, her eyes flickering between us. And in that silence, I realized something. Ellen thought she had control over us. She thought she could drive a wedge between Rachel and me with one cruel text. But she was wrong, because this time we were the ones in control. And as Rachel stood beside me, unshaken, I knew we weren't going to let anyone tear us apart. Not now, not ever. Ellen's eyes darkened, and I could tell this wasn't over. But for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt something else, empowered. Rachel and I had fought for each other, and that's what mattered now. We weren't going to let her win. The tension in the room was unbearable. I could feel the cold air between us, each of us standing on opposite sides of an invisible line. Ellen's gaze didn't waver, and for a second, I thought she might break. Her lips pressed tightly together, a line that showed both frustration and disbelief. She was shocked, genuinely shocked, that Rachel was standing up to her. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. The only sound, the faint hum of the air conditioner in the background. Then Ellen took a step back, a deep breath escaping her lips, and for a moment it seemed like she was considering what Rachel had said. But the moment was fleeting. The icy resolve returned. "You think this is going to end well?" Ellen's voice was low, almost a growl, her words coming out sharp and pointed. "You think you can just walk away from me, from everything I've done for you? This family isn't something you can just throw away. You think I'm the problem? You have no idea what you're doing, Rachel." I saw Rachel's body stiffen beside me, but she didn't flinch. She wasn't backing down now, not when we had come this far. "No," Rachel said, her voice steady, but I could hear the strain underneath. "I'm not throwing it away. I'm choosing what's best for me, for us. I've spent too many years letting you dictate my life, and I'm done. You're not going to control me anymore. I won't let you tear apart my marriage." Ellen's eyes flashed with something darker. Anger, frustration, maybe even fear. But then, just as quickly, she masked it with a bitter laugh. "So, that's it? You think one speech is enough to erase everything I've done for you, for this family? You think you can just shut me out like I'm nothing?" Her words hit me harder than I expected, a jolt of guilt shooting through me. Had we really gotten to this point? Was this what it had all come to? But as I looked at Rachel, I realized something. We had reached this point because of Ellen's actions. It wasn't our fault. We were simply trying to protect what was ours, protect our relationship, and protect our future together. This was long overdue. I stepped forward, my voice firm as I finally spoke up. It's not just Rachel, Ellen. It's me too. This isn't just about what you want anymore. You can't keep pushing us around trying to control everything. We're not going to live in your shadow anymore. You've crossed a line. Ellen's gaze snapped to me, and for a brief moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. It was as if she wasn't used to being challenged by me, her son-in-law. I wasn't supposed to be the one standing up to her, but I had no choice now. I had to stand by Rachel. "You're really going to let him speak for you?" Ellen sneered, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You let him tell me what I can and can't do with my own family?" Rachel didn't flinch, and neither did I. "This isn't about control anymore," Rachel said, her voice unwavering. "You've made it about that for years, but it's not about that. It's about respect, something you've never given us." The sting of her words landed hard, but I could see Ellen's facade starting to crack. For the first time, there was doubt in her eyes. She wasn't used to being questioned like this, especially not by Rachel. It was as if her power, her grip on our lives was slipping away, and she didn't know how to handle it. The silence returned, thick and uncomfortable. But this time it was different. It wasn't a silence of tension or threat. It was a silence of realization. Ellen was realizing that she had lost control, and it wasn't just because of Rachel. It was because both of us were standing together, refusing to let her manipulate us any longer. Ellen shifted uncomfortably, and I could almost feel the weight of her pride pushing against the air. She opened her mouth to say something, perhaps to defend herself, or to regain her control, but instead she just shook her head. Her shoulders dropped, and I saw the smallest flicker of resignation in her eyes. "You think you've won," she muttered, almost to herself. "But you've only just begun to understand what you're dealing with." Her words hung in the air, sharp and cold. But this time I wasn't afraid. This time Rachel and I were stronger together, and no matter what Ellen threatened, I knew that we had the power to protect our lives, our marriage, and our future. Rachel stepped closer to me, her hand finding mine once again. The simple act of holding hands grounded me. We were united, stronger than ever before. And despite Ellen's threats, I knew we had already won, because we were no longer afraid. We were no longer letting her dictate our lives. "We'll deal with whatever comes next, Mom," Rachel said, her voice calm but firm. "But we're not backing down. We're not going to let you control us anymore." Ellen didn't respond. She just stood there, looking at us as if she was trying to decide if we were bluffing or if we were serious. But I could see the shift in her. She knew we were done being her pawns. And for the first time, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Hope that we had the strength to move forward, to build a life that wasn't dictated by her manipulations. "Goodbye, Mom," Rachel said, her voice quiet but resolute. She turned to me, and I followed her out the door, not looking back. I didn't need to. We had already taken control. The storm had passed, and now we were free. Ellen's hold on us was broken, and I knew deep down that we had just begun to truly live. Together. As we walked out of Ellen's house, the weight I had been carrying for years seemed to lift, even if only slightly. The sun was setting, casting an amber glow over the neighborhood, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe again. We didn't speak immediately. There was something comforting in the quiet, a sense of relief that washed over me like a gentle wave. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in ages, I felt hopeful. Rachel's hand was still in mine, her fingers tightly entwined with mine, as if she didn't want to let go. I didn't either. We had just crossed a line we'd been hesitant to approach for so long, and now we were on the other side. The road ahead wasn't clear, but I knew that no matter what came next, we would face it together. We got in the car, and Rachel started the engine, her eyes focused ahead but her face soft. I could see the exhaustion in her features, the emotional toll this day had taken on her. But there was something else there, too. Strength. She had stood up for us in a way I had never imagined she would, and it made me fall even more in love with her. She had fought for our relationship, for our future, and it was something I would never take for granted. "You okay?" I asked quietly, my voice soft, careful. Rachel didn't answer immediately. She took a deep breath and then let it out slowly, her shoulders relaxing as she exhaled. "Yeah," she said, her voice steady, but I could hear the hint of emotion there. "I'm okay. I think I just needed to do that, for us." I nodded, squeezing her hand a little tighter. "You were incredible in there." She gave me a tired smile, but it was a real one, a smile of someone who had just taken control of their life. "I couldn't have done it without you." I didn't have words for how I felt. The pride, the relief, the love, it all mixed together into something overwhelming. But most of all, I felt grateful. Grateful for Rachel, for her strength, for her unwavering support. We had made it through the hardest part, but I knew that there was more work ahead. Ellen wasn't going to give up that easily, and there would be fallout, but we would deal with it when it came. Together. We pulled into our driveway, and I looked over at Rachel, my heart swelling in my chest. Whatever happens next, we're in this together. No more secrets, no more manipulation, just us. Rachel nodded, her eyes meeting mine, and for the first time I saw the true depth of her resolve. "Together," she repeated softly. As we walked into the house, hand in hand, I knew that we had crossed a threshold. We weren't the same couple that had walked in there hours ago. We were stronger now, bound not just by love, but by the shared experience of facing down something that had tried to tear us apart. We had taken control of our own story, and for the first time I felt truly at peace. The road ahead wouldn't always be easy, and I knew we would face more challenges, some of them from Ellen, some from outside forces, but nothing could shake the foundation we had built. Our relationship was ours, and we were the ones who would define it. And as I looked over at Rachel, her tired but determined face lit by the soft light from the kitchen, I knew that we had already won. We were no longer living in the shadow of anyone else's expectations. This was our life, our future, and nothing could take that away from us. We had fought for it, and we had come out stronger, together.